to the show with your friend and mine. So tell me, Dr. Squee, who's it gonna be this time? We like to hear you talk, and we love to hear you listen. And if you are not subscribed, you won't know what you're missing. So welcome to the Dr. Squee Show. Welcome to the Dr. Squee Show. Welcome to the Dr. Squee Show. Headphones up. Here we go.
Hello and welcome to the Dr. Squee Show presents the Twin Peaks Files. We continue our look back at all things Twin Peaks. And I can't speak, I swear. We've already done the original run of the series, but before we get to return, it's time to do the Twin Peaks movies. So it's Fire Walk with Me, which is the actual movie, and then in 2014 they brought out The Missing Pieces, which has it's a 2-hour film, 2 hours 15 in fact, the film, and it's still, they managed to find an hour and a half worth of originally deleted footage. We're going to be going through all that, but there's only one man which I would walk through this particular fire with. I am, of course, Special Agent Squee, and please welcome back to the Dr. Squee Show, Deputy Jim. I thought it was Sheriff. Have you demoted yourself?
No, I've always been deputy. You just always give me more of a grandiose title.
You see, I'm calling you the sheriff. I'm like the special agent, like, you know, we're working together on the case. Don't demote yourself.
You know, the deputy can help out with the case.
Yeah, you see,
I'm like Hawk. He's the cool one.
You see, I just think it's a northern thing. It's like, oh, I'm not no better than folk. I'm just a deputy.
No, I'm because Hawk's the cool guy. So
it is true. It is true. But I thought there was already enough cultural appropriation. No, I'm kidding. No. Twin Peaks actually stands up really well. That's just
they don't do bad.
No, it really doesn't. Like the amount of things that you know, the whole point in doing a look back like this is you do nitpick over the details. You go through everything, how it stands up, all that. But yeah, I'd say it does very well for its time compared to its contemporaries, especially.
I think so. Yeah.
Just before we get going, it is Remembrance Day today. And I'd like to say, actually, like with Coop, it's really lovely to be celebrating him on this day, I think, because I think he does stand up for what like America stands for what kind of like brave souls who fought that day, no matter which country they're from. So obviously we're celebrating here in the UK what they stood for. He is kind of the real deal, standing up for the morals which you would like to see in your leaders. Some of us may not be feeling that right now, but we're going to celebrate people who do, like Coop right now. And for me personally, I mentioned this to Jem before, you know, it just happens to be the day my dad passed away was Remembrance Day. It's an hour into the day, just by coincidence, it happened that way. So I'm just going to, with Jim here, just raise a glass. I always kind of have a tot of whiskey to my dad, and he's going to be joining me with some pop there. So to those we lost on this day, whether it be kind of family members, those who died in the war, just stand up people who we remember. Awesome. That having been said, we've got an ass load of Twin Peaks to talk about. For fuck, jeez, as I say, 2.25 hours worth of film.
Yeah,
and there's an hour and a half cut. I think mostly correctly so, but there was a few bits that probably didn't need to be, which would have added texture.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think one of the things David Lynch said was a lot of the cut scenes were scenes with characters from the show, but who don't really impact the actual story here. So it was almost, I suppose, fan service to an extent. Like there's a scene with Pete and Catherine and Josie that is completely neither here nor there, and I can see why it was cut for pacing.
Yeah, I would say that. I think a lot of those scenes I haven't even kind of paid mention to in my notes here. But if you are a fan of the original show, I would say at least The Missing Pieces is worth watching once, because all those characters which aren't featured in the film are there in the deleted scene. There's not many characters who weren't originally designed to reoccur in the movie. but you can also see why they cut it. There's some kind of scenes which are more a judgment call, I think, like they could have fit in the film. I see why they cut them, but we're going to get into all that. But that's the reason we don't mention those scenes. But yeah, I would say it's a document. If you're a real fan, if you really enjoy the show, it's worth picking these up, I think. Because originally I thought this was deleted scenes. Because again, I've watched it before, but not for ages, and I seem to remember that it was deleted scenes from the TV show as well as the movie. Nope, just straight up an extra hour and a half of movie.
No, it's all from the movie, yeah.
But what we're going to do is we're going to go through the film. I've included some notes on deleted scenes which are relevant as we go, or extended scenes, and then there's a few which I'll cover right at the end. So we start off. I've got some quite extensive notes, but I think a lot of these I'll just read out and we can just dance over, especially that kind of opening section of the film, because I feel like it adds some stuff to what's going to happen later, and it's got Chris Isaacs. It's got Keith Sutherland in it. Some great like Dean Stanton, is it?
Dean Stanton.
Fucking great performances, but it's like a half hour where it could have been 10 minutes really.
Yeah, feeling. if at all, to be fair. I mean, I know we're talking about stuff that was cut out, but I think this is a good primer for when we look at the return, because to put it in context, the show had been cancelled. They're going to do a movie, and people were hoping, the movie will wrap up the loose ends from the show, and that's not what you get. But everyone knew going in, this is going to be a prequel. It's going to be the last week of Laura Palmer's life. So that's what you expect. But then the film starts, and like you say, for half an hour, that is not what you get at all. It does have plot relevance, like you say, but it really cranks up the Lynchian weirdness. And I can imagine people who were going to this because they loved the show, I can imagine it turning off a lot of those people. You know, I think with a show like this, there's different levels of fan. There's sort of a more casual fan, and then there's people who really get into it and really look at like the weirdness and the mythology and things like that. And I imagine those people maybe would have been happy, but the first camp who were just, I remember Twin Peaks, it was pretty good, let's go see this film, may have just been wondering what the hell is going on. And to be fair, I've seen this film before and I've seen the series several times, and I'm still not totally sure what's going on in this opening section.
Well, I'll throw in some context and then I'll start reading the notes. So Chris Isaacs apparently was brought in his character, and I think Keith Sutherland's as well, because originally it was meant to be Coop in the beginning, but to begin with, Kyle MacLachlan didn't want to appear, and then they kind of persuaded him, but in a reduced role. That's how they kind of compromised with him. Then, so then they had to write this additional section. And apparently this was also meant to be the first of a few Twin Peaks movies if this had been successful. So I'm sure, I bet these characters would have reoccurred if we'd had that going on. But we start on static on the TV, and the credits end as an axe goes through the TV. We hear a scream. Cuts the body floating down the river, which is I'm assuming that. So this is Laura's body at the beginning and Laura's scream, yeah?
No, I think this is Teresa Banks.
Teresa Banks. Okay, I backed and forth on that, but I was So it's Teresa Banks, which echoes nicely. So it was what I originally thought, which echoes nicely. Them finding the body at the beginning of Twin Peaks. And good moment to the start of the film. There's something so innocuous about the static, then you go straight to axe. Great job.
Do you think this is Lynch sort of making a comment about how they axed his TV show, like, you know, where
I mean, I never considered that.
We're starting a film with a shot of a TV, and then we smash the TV up as if to say, yeah, I've got a movie now. So, you know.
Could have been. I like that take. So Chris Isaac with a load of FBI agents, all with matching suits, which is great. You know, suits and trench coats. Lovely bit of very Lynchian. Loads of and they're loading on some. They've got two scantily clad ladies being handcuffed. I'm going to just describe this literally, and then we can discuss what we think's going on here because I've got no fucking idea. The driver is there also being handcuffed, and there's a load of school kids on the school bus. Any ideas, or we're just going to go, yeah, Lynch?
Yeah, I think that's the answer. I think it's meant to be like, you know, they're in the middle of another case when we pick it up, but it can't just be a normal case. It's got to have all these different weird elements going on at the same time. But yeah, I think there's a lot that you can pick up on in this film and say, oh, that means something in the bigger picture. But I think this is just a flourish of weirdness.
That was my assumption, so we'll go with that. I love it though. Just please keep in these weird touches. Gordon calls Chris Isaacs in, who's Chet is his character name. Teresa Banks has been murdered, so we set up that. Chet's teamed up with Keith Sutherland, Sam Stanley. Keith does, and I've just put a general note here. I think throughout, Keith does a wonderful job, which he used to, I think, do a lot more of this in his earlier career. He can still do some of it. He's really great at doing kind of these quiet, understated roles. There was one film in particular where, it was one of these ones, you know, where you got like, you bought a DVD player and you got 10 films free with it.
Oh,
it was one of those. And he was just so quiet and so still in this film. I wish I could remember its name, but he was just playing this kind of like very sweet character. He was so good at it. Like he's so good at so many other things, which we see him doing now. He owned action for quite a while, with the likes of 24, and even Designated Survivor was sort of like that, but with him as the president as opposed to the agent. And he does all these kind of great intense roles. I just want to salute the fact that he's also got this in his arsenal, which he rarely uses these days.
Well, that was it. Like when he did 24, it was really like surprise. I remember talking to my friends in pub, like, have you seen 24? And they're like, no. And I'm like, it's Keith Sutherland, but he's really hard. And they were like, "Don't be stupid, Keith Sutherland."
Yeah.
And I'm like, whereas now you're like, yeah, Jack Bauer's like, you what? But you're right. He did a lot of these sort of quite bumbly, unassuming performances when he was younger, and then he became like the action guy. He's had an interesting career.
Yeah, but it's like, I don't think there's many people who could have stood out as he does in those, like you say, bumbling roles, kind of quiet roles. And it's always very notable, everything he's doing, even though he's doing so little. And whereas you've got Hayes is a great mirror for Coop's endless curiosity, but he's shown more as with drive than with wonder, which is a nice kind of, because once you know, it's like, oh yeah, no, I can see obviously he's meant to be Coop basically, but if it wasn't for the fact that he plays it differently, it does make it a different character still. So just credit to Chris Isaac Haynes, who's often, I think he gets forgotten that he's actually a pretty damn good actor as well as the kind of thing which he's known for. Just doesn't do much acting. I just wish he'd do more. He's great in everything I ever see him in.
Yeah.
So now we go to a dancing lady in red called Lil, who's Gordon's mother's sister's girl, which to begin with just sounds like, why didn't you just say cousin? But then it's explained. So I've got a list of the clues, and then I'll get you to weigh in. So we find out in the car she's given them a lot of clues. So we see this dance, and then they're in the clues in the car unpacking this weird performative dance she does in this red dress, never saying anything. So blinking means trouble higher up. Oh, sorry. She's got sour face, problems with local authority, not receptive to FBI. Blinking means the trouble's higher up, so it's like the deputy or the sheriff. Hands in pockets means they're hiding something. Other hand in the fist, they're going to be belligerent. Walking in place means there's a lot of legwork involved. And Gordon's mother's sister's girl equals the uncle's what's missing in that, which of course, because the uncle's in prison. And Gordon does put his hand in front of his face upside down with his finger spread like it's prison bars, which took me the second watch to realize I think that's what he's doing with his hand, because they don't actually mention that when they're unpacking all the clues. That's just a bonus thing for you to work out. And dress altered to fit, which of course Kiefer Sutherland notice has been tailored. So a tailored dress equals drugs, I guess. Tailored drugs. And the blue rose, which we never like, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think we never get quite explained, but we do get, it means a blue rose case. And a scene in The Missing Pieces, Donna's dad mentions a blue rose. But how the FBI have a reference to it, I don't think they ever explain. And it's a pity they cut that scene, because I think that's a nice way of tying it back, of like, because in the film we don't know the significance of the blue rose at all, whereas it does tie back to us. It's a shame they cut that bit out, I thought.
Yeah, and you know, we get more of that in The Return. But yeah, this feels like not a retcon necessarily, because we don't in the show see any of the FBI outside of Twin Peaks. But the way this scene sets it all up is, oh, actually, we didn't tell you during the show, you know, because why would we mention it? But Gordon's actually the head of pretty much the X-Files division of the FBI, and Coop is part of this division, and these other guys are part of this division as well, and they investigate weird stuff. And it's like, oh, okay, I can buy that, but yeah, I think it walks very closely to being a bit of a retcon as to what we've had so far.
Yeah, it's sort of like you've already established all these people are into, you know, the mystical and answers beyond. It's more things dreamt of than in your philosophy ratio, whatever the quote is. Basically, they walk that line a lot.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like when they do retcon it, even though I think you're right, it fits. It doesn't feel like a stretch.
It does fit.
Yeah, they all believe in that stuff.
In a way, does it kind of take something a little bit away from Cooper, maybe? Because he always seemed like he was the maverick one, you know, did things in an unusual way, whereas we find out he's part of this task force who get given clues by a dancing woman. You know, I don't know. I don't think it does, but maybe it makes him a touch less unique that he's in this team.
I think if we'd seen this, obviously, if we'd seen this before the TV show would have been written differently. But let's imagine it would have been written the same, and we saw this before. I think it would have taken away. But by the time you see this, because you have explored all the other characters and how they are supernaturally inclined anyway, it's not really adding anything to them. It's just adding to where they work, really. So to me, it sidesteps that. But I understand what you're saying. Like there was certainly scope for this to do that, to take away something from Coop, but I think they get away with it. What did you think of the lady in dress, the little, just out of interest?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's pretty. I think it's funny. Like I think it's supposed to be funny that you've got the scene in the car afterwards where he's going, "Oh well, obviously that was a clue, and it meant this, and it meant this, and it meant that." So this is the thing. I think David Lynch is a very, very funny filmmaker, and I think sometimes you watch his stuff and think, well, that's just obtuse, I don't understand it or whatever, but I think he's aware of how ludicrous some of this stuff is, and I think he does do it for the laugh at certain points. Like, I know within the context of the show we're supposed to take this seriously, but it's not lost on anyone the ridiculous nature of FBI agents being briefed in this manner. You know, it's almost,
and of course, again, I noticed the tailored nature of her dress, like that. It is at the same time, yeah.
Like, is it almost a bit of a commentary on? Well, you remember how we used to have the Giants saying weird things, and you all tried to work out what that was about. You know, is there maybe a little bit of a commentary there on
self-referential?
You know, yeah, people were trying to read all sorts into Twin Peaks, and now I'm I'm sort of personifying that with this character who has these alleged clues, and I'm not sure if that is the case, that it's almost, yeah, if we accept that this is some sort of reference to that, is he saying, yeah, you did well cracking my super obscure code, or is he saying, is he just taking the piss and going, nah, what were you talking about with all this stuff? I don't know. I don't
Probably
think he's
all of
supposed
the.
to know.
I'd say probably all of the above to some
Yeah,
degree. It's just
probably.
what the mix is in that Lynchian genius mind of his.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think the only thing, as I say, I would probably kept in that mention the blue rose for Laura's character, because not only does it, like everything else ties back to her mystery, and that being cut doesn't tie this back so fully. And it's like they never give you the whole answer in tweaks, or rarely, but they give you some of it. And it's like the blue rose, there's really no answer to why it's called the blue rose case, whereas that was the thing which tied it back, like Lynch always very cleverly does. And just that's going to be my 2 cents worth. And it also, like, one thing I really got throughout this film was like Laura knew everything. Like the closer she got to knowing everything, the closer she got to her own death. And at the moment of her death, she knew everything that was going on. Like, and it was all coming to her, and it was all very painful. And like the blue rose just felt like just one of those pieces. But anyway, we've got a lot to get through. Sheriff's office, Dix, Isaac Lamps, the deputy. I thought it was kind of fun. We've got J. Edgar, another reference to allusion to the past of the America and the FBI. Very nicely done, because you've got B.D. Cooper and the sheriff in the original series.
Truman.
Lots of those in there. Love that. Nice. Keitha randomly appraises the office of in this small town at being £27,000. Oh, sorry, dollars, because why not? Again, just there's so many little random details like that. And then we go to the probably next bit, which we could talk about a bit, is Trace Banks' autopsy. They find the first missing letter T, which is just by the mark where she had the ring on, which links to all the murders. So I like the fact that kind of, it all ties together, that, you know, it's like the ring points towards the clue.
Yeah, and the ring is like a major new part of the Twin Peaks mythology that we get for the first time here.
Isn't it at the end of the series? Don't we see the ring?
No, I don't think so. I think this is the first time we've had the ring.
Okay, yeah. I thought we'd had it once before, but I could be wrong.
I mean, I could be wrong, but I have a feeling this is the first time we get the ring. We certainly didn't know how it was involved in Laura's death before.
Yeah. But yeah, we go to Hap's Diner, which really, not too much on that. Look around Teresa's trailer. Harry Dean Stanton comes in as the trailer park owner, who brings the coffee, which of course must for Twin Peaks, and of course it's extra strong coffee. Nice little just way of including the coffee, which I just think is all throughout Twin Peaks. Find ring on a picture. Find ring on a picture? Find the ring in a picture? Anyway, not sure what that means. Sorry, I wrote these as I was going earlier today. Weird grey-faced old lady comes in, and in a shot where he takes... weird. There's an old lady which has got grey face. She comes in, and Harry Dean Stanton at that moment takes a puff and a cigarette, and that's only for that one frame, or that one little moment. He seems to go in reverse. The shot's reversed. So if you noticed it, I noticed it the first time. I was like, did I imagine that? And the second time, definitely it's reversed. And then he says about talks about like in the lodges. So the reverse, like in the lodges, and he goes, I've already gone places. I wonder if like that lady seems to be connected to the lodge, maybe, like, because she seems super weird and just her face seems unnatural. He goes into reverse, and then he says about going places. Do we assume that he's gone to the lodge before?
I would say so. And isn't, am I getting this jumbled up? But isn't that lady the same lady who had the weird grandson
I think so.
in
I thought
season
so.
2?
Yes, I think so. So I
So
think she
yeah,
was, yeah.
so there's a definite thing going on, and that the lady with the grandson was in a trailer park in Twin Peaks, where
Mm,
obviously this is another trailer park somewhere else. There is like these recurring motifs, like you say, they go to a diner which recalls the Double R diner, and there's the coffee, and now there's a trailer park, and this woman reappears. So I feel like it's intentionally hitting these tropes that we've seen in the show, and it's giving us a sense of mirroring between them. So yeah, I'm willing to go with Harry Dean Stanton has had some sort of experience.
but the reason why I had to ask, because like all the signs point to it, but nothing more on that. Like, just why throw in
Well,
another
hey,
blood?
give it 25 years, you might get a bit more on it.
Good point. Good point. So I should say, just for anyone who's watching this, don't need in the comments. I am going from a point of view of not remembering much from the return, so I'm just referencing what we've seen so far. So please don't burn the comments, because we're going to watch that and we'll include that later. So you can just be very smug that you know something I don't. We're just doing it as we like, and Jim will every now and again go, might get something on that later, because he's already watched the return again. So yeah, we hear the little person in the lodge making the wah wah sound when Haynes looks at the telegraph, which a later scene. Oh, which we hear when he looks at the telegraph in a later scene. So here he does the wah wah,
Yeah.
and that's called back. That's very cleverly used a few times. So it's also used when Leland's in the car and everything's dialing up. You hear the wah 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 wah. So that's, I like those kind of little callbacks. And the ring's underneath the trailer, and that's pretty much where we leave the first story.
Yeah, that's it. Well, we find out later that the agent disappeared, but yeah, we don't see him disappear. We see him reaching for the ring, and it sort of cuts abruptly.
Yeah, that was my further question. Like, do we hear anything about him in the original show? I don't remember him being referenced
No,
or that agent. No,
because I think this character wouldn't have existed if Kyle MacLachlan had have been available
yeah.
longer. So yeah, this character's a new creation for
I wasn't sure if they picked up on an oblique reference in the show and then made it a person, because I know that this character wasn't originally meant to exist, but it's just like, it just seems like it's partly, it might be a bit of a Lynchian touch, but I wonder if Lynch was like, right, I had to invent this character. Oh no, and he's disappeared. Wouldn't you know it? I don't have to write about him anymore.
Yeah, that works.
Again, it might be what you were saying earlier about the acts through the TV, a bit of a fuck you to the studio, basically, because I mean, I don't know if it was anything to do with why Kyle MacLachlan only wanted to be in a limited role or didn't want to be in to begin with. But if Lynch talked him round, I wonder if, I don't know.
I mean, again, there's sort of, and we'll get onto the Lara Flynn Boyle of it later, I suppose, but there's different reports from what I've heard that Kyle MacLachlan, some stories say that he wasn't best pleased with Lynch because of how he left during season 2, and
Right.
that Kyle MacLachlan wasn't happy at how that adversely affected the show. But also, apparently, he didn't want to risk sort of getting typecast as like an FBI agent, so he felt it was too soon to reprise the role.
Yeah, I
mean,
read that.
make up your mind, Kyle. Do you want the show to still be on, or do you want to have a break from it? Because if it hadn't been cancelled, you'd have still been doing it now. Anyway, I don't know. So those are the different reports as to why he wasn't in it much.
And we can quickly cover Lara Flynn Boyle. So, as you were saying to me the other day, one report was that it was because of nudity and she didn't want to do the nudity. According to IMDb, but again, this is no more reliable than someone writing a comment on IMDb under the trivia section. It wasn't that's the urban myth, but she was actually busy filming. But you know, if you don't do this, you end up filming something else. So take that what you want. I have no idea the truth either way.
No, and yeah, that's one that I feel like there's more to the Lara Flynn Boyle story, because you know it's not a spoiler that she doesn't appear in The Return, and she's one of the few characters who doesn't. So yeah, I don't know. Whatever her reasons were, she doesn't appear in this film, and the role of Donna is recast.
Right, now going to the mainstay of the film, just to do a prefix that the James and the Bobby storyline, I've got some notes on, but I've largely ignored because they're boring. I've included them where they're relevant to Laura specifically, but cut out a lot of the drugs bollocks. I just don't think was as interesting as the rest of it.
No, I don't think. What are you skipping over David Bowie?
No, I've got Bowie in there.
Oh, all right, okay.
Exclusively the drugs bit, was he? He wasn't.
Oh no, sorry. I thought you said we were going into the main bit of the film. I thought you'd skip Bowie to get to the Laura Palmer.
No, Bowie's in it with Coop. I consider where Coop enters in, then you're going to classic Twin Peaks in one way or another. It's before you get to Twin Peaks, but you get into the original cast. So it's like you're sort of in the home run now of kind of like the actual original cast. So Coop, he goes straight up to Gordon. It's like it's 10:10 on the February 16th. It's the day I told you about from my dream, because of course that's how he enters. I'll bring it in here as well because it kind of fits. There was a deleted scene where he was through a doorway doing some exercises whilst talking to Diane, which we still don't see because he's talking through the doorway, and he kind of like answers in full sentence like, "Oh no, and don't say this," and he does the whole thing. Like it's basically Norm's wife Vera from Cheers.
Yeah,
it's great. I love it, and they've even got this game they're playing where she hides something or moves something in the office, and she's moved a pot plant 1/4 inch, and he notices it. It is great. It's characterful, and they're right to cut it because it wouldn't fit there. It would slow down entry. If you could add it a bit later on, maybe it would have fit, but really, it's fan service. So this is like for that scene alone, I'm glad I watched the missing pieces because it's so Coop. It's just painful. It's great.
Yeah, it is.
So anyway, Coop realizes, Coop looks at the CCTV, and for some reason just knows that it's going to be a bit off. Which again doesn't like it's just again I don't think there's any kind of real explanation to this, but he keeps on going between the guy monitoring the CCTV and him outside, and he keeps on back and forth thing. To begin with, every time he goes into the office, he's not on screen, and then when he goes in, he is on the screen even though he's in the office, so he's not in front of the camera, and David Bowie's behind him. So, I guess like actually now I've said it back like that, I'm guessing this is my take. Because Bowie, the suggestion is for me, he's been in the lodge as well, and he talks about, who do you think this guy is? About Coop, and it could be a suggestion that the duality and the Coop seeing himself could be an allusion to the evil him being in the lodge. That's my guess. I've come up with on this spot.
I think it's more sort of time dilation, and time's not running right, because isn't Bowie like, because he's playing this character, is it Agent Jeffries, and he's said to have been missing for 2 years, and it appears that because he says something like, "What year is it?" or something along those lines. So I feel like time's not behaving correctly, and that's what's going on with the security camera. But I mean, it's just bizarre. But I agree with you that I mean, if we're gonna take it further, then I think Jeffries has been in the lodge, and I think that there's other things in this film as well which tell us that time in the lodge is much more elastic than time in the real world. So I think if you're in the lodge conceivably you can go to the future or the past. And I think the implication is that Jeffries knows that at some point Coop will be replaced by a double. And I think that's what that's a reference to. But I think he doesn't realise that at this point in time it's still Coop and not the double, the doppelganger, whatever you want to call it.
Because we do get a lot at the same time here. So we've got this wonderful scene. I think Bowie's great in this scene. Like it's the only bit it's in, but it's a great scene. There's a couple of deleted scenes which really don't go anywhere around it. But yeah, so while Bowie's going through this kind of like big story about what's been happening with him and stuff he will and won't say, you also are cutting between that and to the lodge or the waiting room, whichever you want to term it, with the little person, the Bob you've got there, you've got the Mini Lynch, which has got a mask throughout this film, a guy jumping up and down from a stage in a mask as well.
Like, I believe he's credited as the Jumping Man.
Oh, sorry. How was I going to get that from those clues?
I know, yeah.
Oh, why is my screen gone off? I need my notes for this bit. So we've got he also who Coop is, clearly been to the lodge. They bring in the Gorman Gosier, the Formica table, the color is green, the little person says. Minnie Lynch instructs, it seems, Bob to fell a victim. And if you watch the missing pieces, you see both these scenes in their entirety, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And the little person says, with this ring, I thee wed, which I guess is kind of so like, you use this ring to do your bidding, basically, Bob, is what I'm getting from that. One of his few acts that seems to encourage Bob. Like, so I found this really interesting. I felt, whereas in the series, most of the stuff that the little person does seems to more guide Cooper, whereas here, it makes it a lot more ambiguous whether the little person's on the side of good or evil. I'd say most of his acts in the original series are to guide Cooper, and here he's working with Bob a little more, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, he almost seems to be Bob's boss, or maybe not Bob's boss, but the way I always sort of read it is that other than Bob, the rest of them seem to have some sort of authority or some sort of balance, or they seem to work within whatever this weird ecosystem is, and Bob's like the chaotic element of it. But they do seem to have some authority over him, like, when we get the scenes at the end, it's kind of like, right, Bob, you've been out on your killing spree, but you still have to answer to us, kind of thing.
Yeah, I get the feeling, again, just my take in this instant, and it can change watching this again or watching the return, but right now my take is that, right, the people like the little person, the giant, and the other dwellers within the lodge, they know what's going to happen, and their job is to keep time, but like keep events as they should be, because they see the past, present, future. Bob is an agent of chaos and destruction, which they allow out to do the bidding, which was always meant to happen. So he's like, he's basically, he doesn't have the power of kind of all this sight, but he goes out, does these evil things, and brings the experience back, which is the Gorman Gozer, which we'll get into later on in the thing. But that's going to be my take. What do you think?
I'm not sure. I always see Bob as like breaking away from them. I don't necessarily think Bob is filling a purpose within it. I think he's a force of evil that they have some control over, but not complete control. And I think that's where like the ring comes in, because the ring seems to offer some degree of protection from Bob.
Yeah.
So it's almost like, have they created
that?
Yes,
it's protection. You see, I saw the ring as maybe as like, it was like you were marked by Bob if you got the ring.
You see, I think no, because I mean, this is to jump to the end, but Bob is trying to possess Laura rather than kill her.
Yes.
And when Mike, I'm just making sure I get it all. Yes, when the one-armed man, as possessed by Mike, throws the ring in, and Laura puts it on, Bob can't possess her, and that's why he murders her.
Okay. Well,
So I think it prevents Bob from doing that.
interesting. Okay. Well, we'll obviously we'll call back to that in a bit. So next up, I've got oh yeah, sorry, in the same bit. So we've got just a few kind of bits from the missing pieces which are cut from that scene. So it's like just a few quotes basically. The chrome reflects our image. From pure air, we have descended. Intercourse between two worlds, which I found really interesting. Kind of yeah. And animal life. Like so, it's like I feel like they see us as creatures, and they are the intercourse ties into that theme of kind of sexual awakening and sexuality used throughout the show. So I just thought they were interesting quotes. Oh, and I have the fury of my own momentum is Bob's quote. So actually, that does speak to what you're saying. That it's like he does have like he's not completely under their control, which I probably would buy as well. When we go back to the FBI, David Bowie has appeared. In the deleted scene, he's back in his hotel and a guy shot himself. It's just weird. And they seem to have had an extra line for Albert to say, which clearly his mouth isn't moving, which is just ADR. It's just a fun little ADR moment. So it's like he goes, oh no, he's disappeared. Whereas I think there was a longer bit of dialogue there. So I think it was just for time they got him to ADR a line. Or they might have even taken a line from later over him in that moment, so they didn't have to include the extra scene. Whatever. Oh yeah, now it's the older woman, the grandson, Minnie Lynch, as I like to call him, from the show. Used to live in the trailer park. We've already covered that. Asian Desmond Haynes has disappeared. Oh, and Let's Rock is on the windscreen, which I don't get the reference.
The little man said it in Cooper's dream.
There you go. And yeah, that opening section could all have been pared down. So 1 year later, we're in Twin Peaks.
Oh, hang on, though. Just something. There's not a lot to say about it at this point, but I want to flag it up for when we get to the return. Bowie mentions that we're not going to talk about Judy. So I think we should respect Mr. Bowie's wish and not talk about Judy, but as long as we're aware that that's been said, I think
and there is a duty to not speak about.
Yes, I think that'll be something we can speak about or not, perhaps later on. But I didn't want to let the moment pass completely.
Thank you for foreshadowing that. So 1 year later, we're in Twin Peaks. Lovely, where they basically do the credit shot and they
that's Twin Peaks
music. Everyone loves that. Who's not going to love a callback like that? We meet Laura and the school cast. It's very economical, I think, this scene. We establish who all the characters are in her world just by her walking past them, basically. Everyone gets one line, which really tells you who they are. You even get her taking coke. It all kind of really paints a very clear scene, so I'm just going to say it like that. Bobby and the picture of Laura in the trophy cabinet, he gives a weird, creepy kiss to the like basically tongues the trophy cabinet. Very on brand for him. But I messaged you after I saw this bit that something was really struck with me about this is like, because that's the picture which is always used in the credits, and it's the picture you essentially get that's the missing person picture they've used for Laura. And it just made me think of all those pictures of missing young people or people who've been killed, unfortunately. And there's always this one picture which you see everywhere, and you so associate it just as their missing person picture. But seeing it here, and they use it in the set at home. Basically, they print up one photo. They didn't like. It's almost weird how it's just one picture everywhere. But we'll pass that by. But it just is kind of like, I don't know. It like made the hair stand up on the back of my head. That kind of thought of like this picture which you associate with death was once part of someone's life.
Absolutely. I mean, this is the thing with the film, isn't it? Like Lynch, I think, said that he got really curious as he wanted to see Laura while she was alive, which obviously we haven't up to this point. I know Cheryl Lee came back in as Maddie, but that wasn't Laura. And so even though we feel like we know this character really well because we've found out so much about her life and everything, this is the first time we've seen Laura, if you like, and like you say, all the things that she interacts with, and including that picture, it is showing it all in a different context. It's it's a disorienting experience. I think I said to you, like, it's like you're watching a ghost walking around, because Laura is synonymous with being dead. You know, that's, if you like, that's her thing. that's all we've ever known. And then to see her walking around and doing the things that we've heard she did, like, you know, doing cocaine and whatnot. And it's a strange viewing experience.
Yeah, it was already made canonical from the TV show, but we see it from the other point of view here as well. Whenever she kind of like dreams of Coop, and we know now that he's there in that moment, but it's just in the future for him and it's the past for her. But it was it meant a lot to me. Just it really did that they had this moment where they were both there. It wasn't a dream for either of them. They were both there and they got to meet, because Coop has this. It feels like very real relationship with her, which isn't just a relationship with a dead person. It's with her soul, and it's all that I love.
Yeah.
But anyway, James is still dull even when he's making love to Laura, which I thought was quite a feat. Later on, I will go on to say how I think I get why he's there now, though, but we'll get there. Donna talks about being lost in space, and Laura says the angels wouldn't help you because they've all gone away, because she's talking about, like, would you move slower or faster if you were falling through space? Of course, we know you move at uniform speed, but we won't get into that. It's poetical. But the angels wouldn't help you because they've all gone away. And in a deleted scene, again, the same scene as they mentioned the Blue Rose, which double reason to include this. Donna's dad says in a letter to Donna, which he finds, saying the angels would come back and then they will weep with joy. And he references the Blue Rose, as I said. So and that builds into the theme at the end. So again, that scene, that one particularly, I think could have stuck, because it's got a double reference to the rest of it. And this would have tied it all up together. Then we go to creepy Harold's in the woods, who pretends not to have nicked pages from Nora's diary, which we see in the series he has got. Which, fucking hell, like, she is in such distress. Like, I think you could almost excuse him when you see him in the TV show as being disturbed, but like somewhere I felt like his heart was in the right place. No, he's a piece of shit. I decided.
Oh no, he is. Yeah,
he's openly lying to her when she's in such distress. But you know what I mean? In TV show, even after he's been proved to be a bit creepy, you sort of get the feeling of someone who's got a mental health issues. He can't leave his house.
Yeah, definitely.
But this goes beyond excusing any of that.
I think so. Yeah, and it is. I like the fact that what they've done is looked back at the show and gone, right, we established that Laura did this, and this, and they have managed to include it all. Like, we didn't need a scene with Harold, but it's good for the continuity that they put it in. And like you say, it does put a different sort of slant on his character. So,
and I'll give them credit for that, because referenced Babylon 5 before on this look back, so it's very weird to reference Babylon 5 twice in the Twin Peaks look back, but here we are. There was a TV movie. They did some TV movies at the end of the run of Babylon 5, and one was called In the Beginning, and it goes back to before the TV show, and it's like everything in it's a fine watch, but it's just showing you stuff which is perfectly explained. You're not getting anything new.
Yeah.
It's just showing you it, which kind of reductive. Here, I would say anything that you get, like you say, like, you didn't really need to include Harold, but the scene does add texture to his
It
character.
does,
And
yeah.
that's what they do really well. Nothing in here is just telling you what you've already seen. Everything has something new added to it, which I just think is to the credit, their credit with this. So Laura says Bob either either wants to, like you said before, either wants to be her or to kill her. And this feels very much like the pact he must have offered Leland, and where Leland, I think, gave into it. Laura's been living with Bob her whole life. I think is what I'm taking away from it, and is never given into that deal. Like, you know, it's and you can understand why Leland did at the threat of death, but I get the feeling that was just like that's the first pact you make with him to let Bob in, but then there's loads of mini pacts along the way. So I think Leland gave in to corruption, to women, to all these vices. But it's kind of interesting. So it's like Laura every time says no to him, and it's just that's the only sort of difference between their, you know, what happened to them, I feel like. And Harold, when he's looking at Laura, sort of sees her own cadaver. She goes deathly white, which I take as allusion to her dying. And I think suggests that his actions have contributed. I think the way he's lying to her, the ripped pages, I think that adds to her just going over the edge. Like, I think any one of these little things could be pulled away and she might have made it.
I don't know. It feels like there's not just because we know she dies, but it does feel like there's an inevitability to Laura's death. And maybe if something were taken away, maybe it wouldn't have got there, but I don't know. I feel like, I mean, yeah, she'd have probably been a bit happier if everyone hadn't have been as horrible to her. But
I think there's definitely a reason why he sees her cadaver, which again, that's what I'm taking it as anyway. I think that's pretty clear. I think definitely a reason why he sees it is it's definitely saying, well, what you're doing is fucked up. Like, it's definitely that's my take anyway. Like, he's the one who sees it, so it must be because of one of his actions. And it seems like him being shitty to her when she's just about to die, I think is just like a fuck you to him one way or the other. Coop talks to Albert about the fact that he knows from his vision the killer will strike again. Albert will help him solve it, and he describes Laura. Just a nice little scene. I haven't got too much on that one unless you have.
No, it's interesting though that at this point it does briefly cut back to Coop, even though we're location-wise we're in Twin Peaks now, and I always forget that there's this little scene that cuts back to Coop. So it almost feels like it breaks up the flow a little bit, and if I'm not wrong, this is the last time we see Coop in the present, if you like. We see him in the lodge later, but yeah, it just always, I don't know. I don't have an issue with it. I think it's fine. It just feels a little bit strange that the film breaks geographically away from Twin Peaks, albeit briefly.
And honestly, in all fairness, when you've got limited Coop time, that's when you could have lost. Like, you could have added some of the other bits we were talking about at the expense of this. I think they wanted to include all the Coop they could, though.
Probably, yeah. It feels to me like Coop belongs in the prologue, and you know what? Once he says, "I fear the killer will strike again," and we get the 1 year later, and we get the Twin Peaks music. I feel like we're in Laura's world, and it just feels a bit weird cutting away from it at this point in the film.
Yeah, maybe you could have included him in another lodge scene as opposed to this one if you want to keep the amount of presence. But yeah, this is just something we know from that actually probably is one of the few ones where it's something we completely know from the TV show, doesn't really add anything. And it adds to my point earlier, there's not much of that, which Leland's old lady and Minnie Lynch are beckoning Laura towards her fate and basically directing towards Bob and the fact that Bob is manifesting in her dad. They give her that picture. Leland's aggression and menace is now very apparent. Wash your hands. There's dirt under your fingernails. Where the letter will be, which is very nice kind of little bit of business. Mum is concerned, but deleted scene does suggest that she's been drugged for a long time. So for me, I think I don't think she knows. I feel for Leland in this bit, as he seems to have moments of clarity where it's like his true soul fights through. And again, I'll reference one of the other deleted scenes, which shows a nice sort of family moment around the table, which this one I really wish they'd included, because it's
I do.
It's saying that there were these times where Laura like wasn't fearful of her dad, where he wasn't Bob, where it was definitely her dad. She's probably seen flashes over the years, but definitely this is the turning point of where Bob takes over Leland, as opposed to just having moments of control.
And that's it. And like, and another thing, we've never seen the Palmers together as a family. Like, we had a couple of scenes where it was with Maddie, but obviously we've not seen it with Laura. And so to actually, that deleted scene you're talking about, where they're sat around and the because it's the Norwegians are coming, that we remember from the pilot episode.
Yeah.
And so Leland's trying to teach them greetings in foreign languages and things like that. And it's just really nice to have a scene to show that there is a nice family dynamic. But I think this is where you and me differ on our take on it. 'Cause I think the mother, Sarah, did know. And to me, it feels really obvious in this film that she did know. And that, to me, makes me look at how she behaves in the show much differently. I mean, she's more or less comatose with grief for the majority of the show, which is understandable anyway, because she's lost a daughter. But to me, it adds, there was probably a layer of guilt there as well, because she knew that there was this abuse going on. But as you say, we see in this as well that he's actively drugging her so that she's incapacitated while he does things.
Because what we see in the film in the end is her being drugged by him just before everything happens. But in the deleted scene, we see that's been happening for a longer period of time, which for me puts the ambiguity in there, which admittedly, again, isn't in the final version of the film. So it depends on what you consider canon at that point, as well as everything else. But I mean, I think you could make the argument either way, but it's like, I mean, I certainly would say that I think on some level she knew something. I don't think she knows nothing, but I think the drugging gets her confused enough, certainly enough to be able to deny it to himself. So I don't think she's certainly purposefully lying, is my own take. But I again, your take is, it works just as well, I think, with the facts we've got here. So Coop's in the lodge. There's again, I think it's only one of these that makes it into the film, but there's two in the, including deleted scenes, where the little person says, "Is this the future or the past?" And then this early one, it's about Laura, and then the later one, which is cut, it's about Molly, if I'm correct.
Annie.
Oh, sorry, Annie. Pardon, Annie.
Yeah,
sorry,
I think you're right. Yeah.
So in this one, it's about Laura, and it's kind of interesting because it's like, because obviously he knows this moment's repeated, but for Coop, he's either in the future or the past, depending on what point in the show. Anyway, so he tells Laura not to take Coop very excitedly tells Laura not to take the ring. Makes sense now that he's both in the future and the past. Annie is in bed with Laura and gives her the information from the end that she's there with Coop to put in a diary, which he finds later. So that's a wonderful little Ouroboros in the series.
Yeah,
which I really enjoyed. I love the lodge allows for stuff like this.
Yeah, and that's also, even though it's a prequel, it's a prequel that you couldn't have made until after, because we do have the, chronologically, even though it's in the past, that Annie is from the future and is referencing things that we know to happen later on. So, yeah, I really like that. I feel like that was a little morsel for the people who wanted to find out what happened next.
Yeah, and there in another one of the deleted scenes, you see her repeating the same information again to the air in the hospital. So obviously that's what she's physically doing while she is mentally in the past next to Laura. and so you see that she's alive as well. And then the nurse picks up the ring and presumably takes the story on. But it's just kind of nice to get an answer that Annie's okay, and I know in the return, I'm sure something might come through about that as well.
Well, we shall see.
We shall see. The log lady, yay, basically says about innocence being sacrificed. There's this just wonderful scene where it feels, this whole section feels like it's Laura kind of attending her version of her own funeral. So you've got the log lady almost gives this blessing to her, and then you go into the diner, the log cabin bar thing, where you've got it's Julie Cruz who does the singing throughout the TV show. So she's in a few episodes doing that. And she sings, which is this song which feels like a funeral song, like it's kind of about saying goodbye to Laura. That feels like to me. It's just really great, and Donna is looking on as if she feels like she is throughout, as if she's trying to help a friend, but she's powerless to do so. So I figure there's a very nice thing with Donna about her always being there with a friend, always wanting to help her, ultimately never being able to.
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways, Donna's character's more well defined in this than it was at times in the show. Like, particularly in sort of the second half of season 2, I think we talked about it last week. Like, they really just didn't seem like they knew what they wanted to do with Donna. But here, it is quite clearly defined what her role is and how she feels, how she relates to Laura and all the rest of it.
Yeah, because it's quite funny, because I feel like you say, it sort of puts a button on what we've seen of Laura throughout most of the show, and it kind of like, not Laura, pardon me, what's the name? Donna. It shows that it basically sums up that where Laura would take the risks and go places and be unsafe in situations, Donna was the safe one in the pair, and that works for what she is in the first series. In the second half of the second series, it just seems like Laura Flynn Boyle going, no, I want to be a femme fatale now. And like, we know she used some of the influence from dating Colm McLaughlin to push that kind of side of it. And she wanted to be, well, certainly a female romantic kind of interest in it. It sounds like, which didn't really fit.
No, they definitely. I mean, I think again we talked about last week. Like once you get the Who Killed Laura Palmer resolved, the supporting cast of the teenage characters don't have anything to do anymore, so they really struggled. Whereas dialing it back here, everyone has a clearly defined role and how they fit into the story, and so yeah, the characters feel a lot more focused, particularly the James, Laura, Donna, Bobby to an extent.
Yeah. And now we get a scene which actually kind of exemplifies what we're talking about, that Laura, I'd say, puts herself into these worlds of sex and drugs and all this, and Donna tries to go along with her, but she's not part of that. Like, it never quite fits her. So it's a bar orgy is what we're going into next. Donna's trying to prove she goes wherever Laura does, but can't. Laura throughout this seems to use sex to take back her power. So I found this really interesting, because whereas it was kind of self-destructive at the same time, it's almost like a fuck you to Bob, because Bob tries to use male sexuality and how it kind of to consume and to kill women, whereas she uses female empowerment around sex, which, even though it could seem like she's doing the same thing with sex, she's doing it to take that control and that power back. So I thought it was a really interesting dynamic.
It's very sort of sex positive from Laura's point of view, that it's not the sex that is wrong, that it's the people she's doing it with that are leading her down a dark path, really. But there's no sort of slut shaming or anything like that
No.
there. But there is almost this sense that like Laura knows that she's on this destructive path, like the way that scene finishes is she sees like there's a guy who's got Donna on a table and has got her clothes off, and Laura all of a sudden, even though she's been up to all sorts in this scene, she's like, no, but Donna shouldn't be doing that. Like, it's fine for me. But
Well,
and again,
I feel
I
like she knows
don't.
she's going to die. I think that's why she thinks it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like I don't think it's a slut shaming thing. Like,
No.
I think what it is she doesn't want Donna to be part of that world. So that's why she feels she has to protect her and get her out of it. Like, Donna almost sort of represents a degree of innocence, and that Laura knows that she no longer has, but almost wishes she still had, if that makes sense. It's like she
Yeah.
wants to save that which Donna has that she knows she herself has lost.
Perfectly put. And I think it's again, I think, especially with what comes just before it with the log lady and the singing, I think that's one of the big pieces. Like, she might not have got all the details at this point, but I think she's got most of the details that she's going to die, that everything, all these things which are happening around her that she's a part of, which ends with her losing her life. But she knows that's not going to happen to Laura. So this is our only moment to like, her only moments to have sex. This is our only moment to have any experience. I think it's partly working out our grief through that as well. Like, there's so much going on there. It's so rich. And like you say, I think in another, in fact, most TV shows, I think this is a commentary on those TV shows where it does show sex shaming, where it shows men being charged of sex. And like, it's almost like these TV shows are very kind of like, very kind of like two-sided about it, because at the same time the men are always the savior, but be careful of men with sex. But it's like, well, that's you guys who are also telling us are the heroes. It's like, I think it kind of like, it just takes that in a much more kind of like realistic thing of like, well, if that's what we're meant to be scared of, who's the person who can take the power back? It's the woman who's going to be at the expense of all that. It's so much going on there. Seriously, we could do an hour just on that scene alone, but the only thing I will add is this also kind of exemplifies something which I find throughout Twin Peaks. I don't think one of Lynch's things, I think every sound that's in the show is very purposeful, but sound quality may not be something that he was super fussed with throughout the show. And this is probably the biggest example.
I mean, this scene, it's intentional. Like, you're not supposed to be able to hear all of the dialogue, and I know like Lynch flip-flopped on whether to include subtitles or not.
So it went in the American version, but the UK version, because he was flip-flopping to the last moment, the UK version didn't have it on. So I wasn't sure. It's like, because there are some other points where I've been like, the sound is, it's really hard to hear what that person's saying because the lightning and this other noise has gone on, which Lynch has decided to include. Some which I know were surprises on the day, which he goes, oh, well, that seems like a very human moment, and will probably throw people off, so we'll keep that in. But I wasn't sure if he meant it to be this obscured, the sound. I don't know.
I think he's very good at using sound to make you feel uncomfortable, and having jarring sounds in there, and having sounds where it really puts you on edge and you're like, I don't want to hear that. It's not pleasant. But also, I do take your point, because like, I watched this time the remaster that's been done of this, that there was released on the Twin Peaks Complete Mystery Blu-ray, and subsequently by the Criterion Collection. But prior to that, I only had the DVD copy of it, which the picture quality is appalling, the sound quality is appalling. So I think some of this may be that the actual print of the film was not so great, and not a lot until recently, not a lot of care has been taken with it. So yeah, I think perhaps what I'm saying, I think, is that this is the best you're going to get. Probably, this is the best the film's ever looked. So I have a feeling it's intentional because I think using sound that way is something that he does. Like quite often, I will be watching a scene by Lynch and just feel uncomfortable just because of the sound,
Yeah,
and I think he is doing it on purpose. But I don't think the sound quality in this film is as good as it could be. But I think that's probably more a reflection of the way the film's been preserved over the years.
fair enough. So Leland then pictures Donna and Laura in their underwear when he's talking to them, which just you like this is one of the good examples. Like just in a moment, he looks like he's grinning at this image, and then he looks really kind of shocked, almost like he's caught himself. Just another little wonderful moment.
I think also though that's well, not a callback because we get it later, but that's almost a flash of a memory from when he saw Laura with what was her name, Ronette Pulaski. So
which,
I
by the
think,
way,
yeah,
they've cast two people, like the new Donna and the victim who survives. I know they've used it to like in this scene to foreshadow, like you say, or foreshadow stuff which he's seen in the past, but we haven't seen yet. However you would term that. But like those two actors, way too similar looking. So at one stage, I was confused which I was looking at. I honestly, first time I watched, I was going, "Well, what's Donna doing there?" Before I realised it's not her. So this scene is brilliant. It's the scene at the lights. So the one-armed man goes nuts at Leland. Really powerful scene. The noise of the little person going wah, 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 comes through. You've got the barking dog. There's loads of cuts in it. It's super tense. You can hear most of what the one-armed man's saying, but it's really interesting. You can't hear all of it. So it's kind of like your focus is being dragged in all these directions. Like that holds for quite a while, and you keep on going into Ray Wise's face and how kind of like stressed he is, and how you can feel he's being pulled between these two identities, basically. And obviously, the one man's talking about the fact he's going to like here's the threat to Laura, and he pulls in the garage. It just really amazing scene. And there's kind of, and then after that, you have a conversation in the same scene with Leland and Laura, where they're sort of almost playing cat and mouse with each other because Laura's like, Dad, were you home on this time? It's like, no, I wasn't. It's like, oh, no, I wasn't. It's like, well, what were you doing? I'm like, oh, it's just at the end of the road. And you never quite know how much Leland knows and how much it's Bob's taking those memories, which he doesn't.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Sort of
you never quite, and they play with it as well because some scenes will see Bob, like when Laura does come home and we see Bob going behind her dresser looking for the hidden diary, and we actually see it as Bob, not Leland. And even though physically it must still be Leland, but then you go back to the series, and was it the one-armed man said like the who is it who he says, oh, the gifted and the damned can see Bob, so because Laura is damned, that's why she can see Bob as he is.
And the one-armed man is gifted, but he also occasionally gets a little taken over by Bob as well. So he's a wonderfully complex character.
Yeah, he gets taken over by Mike.
Oh, sorry, by Mike, of course, but
yeah,
he's also a teller and a seer, as Coop puts it. It's just great. And then it comes to Laura everywhere the ring's been. So she sees it on the one-armed man, on the other victim, the Teresa's hand, the little person. So she sees it in all the places it's been. And again, I think that builds the motif of her seeing what's going on more and more the closer she gets to her own death. It's like she can only see the whole picture just as she's dying. See Leland killing Teresa, which I said to you, it's like until seeing this, I'd never put together that it was Leland Bob doing that first murder. I always thought it was Bob with another victim because they never really do anything to say that. I think
Yeah,
most people, I think you said you did kind of put it together. It was Leland, but that never clicked with me.
it only sort of after the fact, because when Leland tells the story about being possessed when he was very young, it
Mm,
it kind of has to have been Leland. But I think going way back to the start of the series when Coops is like, oh, and there was another victim who also had a letter under a nail. Then at that point, yeah, we assume it's Bob, but yeah, I don't think there's any reason at that stage to think necessarily that it was still Leland. But this really ties it together because seemingly he killed Teresa because Teresa knew that basically he was Laura's dad, and yeah, it could have sort of exposed him and everything.
yeah,
So,
I mean, for
yeah,
me, sorry, go on, mate.
again, I think maybe it almost makes it a bit too neat. Like it makes it a bit less sort of expansive feeling that I think the idea that Bob was this evil entity that's out there killing people and trying to spell his name out or what have you. And if those victims were random, I think that makes it scarier than it being Bob killing Teresa as an act to protect his hiding place effectively.
Yeah, I mean, I think the reason why I kind of like because I knew he'd possessed Leland from a child, but I guess like I thought it might have been a trans story thing where he could possess others, then return back. Like, yeah, it's just meant like I get for some reason like, and I guess there's no reason particularly like your way of it, like him just being possessing him and keeping there throughout makes more sense. I don't know why. I just for some reason I had the feeling he might possess someone else along the way, but yeah. We also, yeah, because there's also a line which Teresa says about like, oh, sorry, Leland says to Teresa about like, oh, and those two girls which you want to introduce you to, and then they shows her like back there, she's got Laura and the other victim there, and it's like, oh, so creepy. Like I know it's all creepy,
Yeah,
but it's just there's something because they're in their underwear when you flash to them, it's like it just really nails like that the incest of it all
yeah,
beyond
yeah.
Leland's
The
choice.
like the incest was, you could infer it from the TV show if you put all the pieces together, but it's just very in your face, and it's I don't think we're being risque by saying incest is disgusting, and
No, I think we're safe on that one.
anyone in the right mind watching it's horrible. It's one of the worst things you can think of, and it's dealt with quite brazenly in this film. To get like Twin Peaks has always had this dark underbelly, but this goes really, really dark, and it's unflinching in how it presents it.
Yeah, I mean it feels like that one scene where Bob basically just Leland destroys Laura's cousin. Just really like the murder is so brutal,
Mm,
it's so impactful, so well filmed, and it's like this film is like Lynch has managed to do this for the whole film. Like every moment
yeah,
is
I
dialed up
agree.
to
Yeah.
that extent. Some bits are more shocking than others, but it's an extreme as you feel like he always wanted to be with a TV show. Now he's kind of got the chance to do it, and he does not
Hmm.
waste the opportunity. So Bobby kills the dealer. I told you we would mention him much. It gets mentioned once in the TV show, then nothing. Oh well.
Yep.
Poor old drug dealer. The night before Laura's death, her mum sees a vision of a horse being after being drugged by Leland. Sure, because nice big white horse.
I think we
I,
saw
I,
the
I,
horse
I
before, didn't we? Didn't we get the horse
we
just
did,
before Maddie died?
we did, and I still don't know why. It's a big white horse.
I think it's a reference to death in the Bible because death is a pale rider and he rode on a pale horse. So that
Yeah,
that
sure.
that that would be what I would take from that.
So we then get into there's no other way of saying it, the rape scene. So we are going to talk about that. So for anyone who's of a sensitive nature at this point, please sort of at least forward on, or perhaps skip the rest of it because it's not going to get much less shocking.
No.
So it's it is a rape scene. I don't want to shy away from that, but there is this kind of the way they present it. So she sees Bob, not Leland. She's very high at this stage, and I think she knew it was coming. And she's never let herself be corrupted by evil, but it's almost like in this moment, in whatever messed up state she's in, she does react to the sex. It's just the way it's played. I'm not making judgment on that. Just it is. She reacts to the sex as opposed to just screaming at him. Is like, you know,
yeah. No, I think that's definitely the way it's presented. Which, yeah, I mean, the way
and she wants
you
to tell her who she is finally, and I think that's what she's trying to. It's almost like I don't know, she's trying to play him at his own game or something. I don't know.
It's like, yeah, she wants to know, like you say, it's almost like she knows that it's coming to an end, and she wants some answers before the end of it. And yeah, unfortunately, the answer she gets is that it's a dad, which is not.
Well, that's it. Because I feel like I think she is directly asking Bob who he is.
Yes.
And instead, his last fuck you to her, because he can't break her, as in letting him overtake her, whereas he did Leland. And I think that makes him all the more want to corrupt her, but he can't. All he can do is kill her. And so as opposed to tell her who he is, which would give her some satisfaction, said it's like, no, who I am is your dad right now. That's what I'm possessing. So I'm gonna it's that unimaginable cruelty. As opposed to giving her any answers, he gives her the worst thing you could in that moment. The only thing which could break her at this moment, knowing she's going to die and knowing everything else, is that. And that's what he does.
Yeah. See, I think at this point he still thinks he is gonna possess her, because as I say, my interpretation is that it's only the ring that prevents that. So, but that still feeds into what you're saying, because he is trying to break her down at this point, and at this point he reveals that, and like, without getting majorly icky, but you know, you can't really help it when you're talking about this thing. Like you say, she does respond to it, and it's almost like she's resigned herself to the fact that this is going to happen. So it's almost like she's trying to enjoy it, for want of a better word, like, even though it's not what she wants to be happening.
Like, this is going to be one of her last experiences, so she will take
it's almost
like, again, it's about her trying to take the power back. It doesn't feel explosive still to me.
It's almost like she thinks, well, even though I don't want this to be happening, I can still enjoy the physical sensation of it. But then that becomes the worst point for him to reveal that it's actually a dad, because it's almost like, yeah, and you were enjoying it as well, which is just, it's just it's horrible.
Every moment of cruelty can squeeze into this one moment. And it's the breakfast scene the next day. I've just put here, fuck.
Yeah, it's
just because Leland doesn't know what's happened, and that just makes it so much like, because he's been used as an instrument. No matter how much, I do believe he's been corrupted. You say about the ring, which I'll buy that's a protection thing, but I also think that Laura all these years has resisted Bob, and maybe this is the moment where she
I think so.
The ring, whereas Leland gave in to him, but it still doesn't make Leland deserve all that happens to him. But
no, it doesn't. Leland's a victim of Bob, certainly,
and it's only when Laura says for him to keep away from him, it's like he has like this again, it's wonderful acting by Wise here, that he has a moment where you see his face kind of drop, like he remembers, but before it can even adjust into that new facial expression, it turns into, you can see his face taking glee. So it's like it's sad, then happy, like then gleeful at the pain straight away. And that is such an acting challenge. It's just so pitch perfect the way they've done it. Laura's crying at school, and then we see her in her school desk, and as she's sitting there, she fades away to just the desk, which again, more and more foreshadowing. And I think that represents everything everyone else goes through when they return to that school later.
Yeah, exactly. And it calls back to the pilot episode, where there was the empty seat.
And Laura tells Bobby she's going home. And in this moment, she says that tells Bobby she's going home. Bobby doesn't really understand. Obviously, we get the subtext of that. And then there's a scene where this is the only bit I think throughout, and we've just talked about an absolutely horrific scene, but we can see why everything is in it the way it is. Whereas the one scene, and this is the only one I can't think of a justification for why they do it the way it is. You've got the scene where Laura's on the phone to James, and she's putting her tights on and flashing her legs quite a lot. She's in this bodice, and it's like it seems weirdly over sexualized for no reason. Like, I can't see one reason why we see so much of her in this scene.
No, me neither, I don't suppose. That's maybe just to give you kind of the juxtaposition of she's on the phone to James, who is someone who legitimately cares for her, but she's getting dressed up to go to another orgy, effectively.
Yeah, I mean, be honest with you, we are like my kind of again, very few notes on James, but you get James and Laura's goodbye, and yeah, like you say, I believe that he was one of the few people who really cared for her. I believe that now I understand why he was there at the beginning to represent that for her. I think the whole thing of making him a bad boy never worked, and just just got rid of that problem. He should have just been the one who cared for her. Like, I think he could have been a much better character as that.
I think they intended him to be cool, and whether it was the actor, the writing, all of the above, it didn't come off. But yeah, I think he's meant to be the wholesome one, and it's a very, it's heartbreaking that there's the bit where Laura grabs him and screams that she loves him and everything, and it's this sense that she recognizes that he's a good guy, but she knows that that's not the life she can have anymore. It's like it kind of reminds me of when I was a teacher. I'd taught obviously I won't name any names, but I'd taught this lad throughout his high school career, and then when he got to year 10, I was his form tutor, and he'd always, been a bit naughty, and he was a handful in class. And I remember, like, he said when he realized I was his form tutor, he was like, "Oh, I'm going to stop winding you up now because you're my form tutor now." I was okay. And then I tried like talking to him, and I remember he said to me, and again it was heartbreaking. So he said, like, "I know you're trying to help me, but it's too late. I'm not gonna do any good." And
Jesus,
and that to me is what Laura's sort of got going on here. Is she's almost like, yeah, I recognize that James is a good guy and he's just trying to treat me right and everything, but we're past that. I'm past that point, kind of thing, and that's a really sad realization for anyone to come to. And but I think that's where Laura's at.
And I think that kind of leads her to where she screams, "I love you." I think maybe she's even realizing in that moment, because there's Bobby, who she just said goodbye to. It didn't feel like that. It was just like, I'm going home. You don't get what that means, and that's part of the problem. You know, it's like, you never really got me. There's other people who just use her, and yeah, I think she just realized in that moment. So creepy guys want to tie Laura up, which obviously she knows what's going to happen, so she doesn't want it to happen. But Leland is watching and waiting to pounce. The one-armed man runs towards them just too late, but then he kind of gets taken over for a moment. We see the lodge and the little person. Bob tries one more time to get Laura to submit, which in the end, again, like I said before, in the end, he can only kill her, he can't control her. And yeah. Laura sees an angel, and she seems to somehow then open the ropes for the other victim to escape. It's like, it's almost like whatever, whether it's that angel and where that angel comes into it, something from the lodge, I think, gives her that power in the moment. It's like, you know, we know you've got to die, but this person doesn't have to. We will grant you this boon.
Yeah.
And survive.
Yeah, it's like the angel can watch over Renette, but can't for Laura. Yeah.
And you just hear Leland screaming, "Don't make me do this," just before he kills Laura, which just, the one-armed man possessed hits the other victim, who then escapes alive as per the show. Leland floats the body away, which again, right from the beginning, and he now appears as a cadaver himself, like mirroring the scene with Laura earlier, but also foreshadowing his demise, which I think is setting course by this moment. I think as soon as all this happens, he's always going to die where he does, and that's always going to be what happens with Bob, which kind of works with your point that Bob he has some agency, but he can't control larger events. So Bob probably doesn't realize all this, but the others back at the lodge do. And then Bob does an interpretive dance show of what he's done to give the Gormandosia pain and sorrow, as it is in brackets in the film on the subtitles.
Yeah.
In
and
blood. Sorry, go.
That seems to be what they feed on, doesn't it? And it's like my take on it is always been like, you know, Bob's been out there and he's done all these horrible things, and when he comes back, they're like, well, we didn't want you going out there and doing that, but, you know, give us the good stuff that you've brought back, kind of thing.
Yeah, I believe everyone in the lodge has got to have full access to all the experiences, apart from Bob's more of an agent of the lodge than like one of the higher ups, if you will.
Yeah, like I think the higher up ones have more control over things, but it's like, right, it's almost like, you know, if you've got a kid, like, you know, you've got a wild teenager who's going out and they've got loads of booze, and you go, right, come here, you're grounded. Oh, and by the way, I'll have that booze, lovely. You know, it's almost like he's been off doing naughty things, but that don't mean they're not going to enjoy the spoils of it.
And you've got, it seems to be hard baked in that, as I was mentioning previously when we were talking about the series, it's like Bob can physically act in our world, admittedly through possession, whereas all the others seem to have to appear in visions or appear to one person, and it's like they can't act themselves. They can only nudge. So when Bob goes out and does these things, like, yeah, well, we'd love to know what it's like to experience, and we need to be caught up so we can control time and everything.
I mean, Mike can possess people as well.
Oh yes, because he's another Bob, basically. He's like on the Bob level.
Bob and Mike seem to be unique in that respect. And the Gammon appears as corn syrup.
Yeah, yes, it goes to candy corn or corn syrup, whatever.
Yeah.
We don't have
and we've seen that before. We saw that with the grandma and Minnie Lynch back in that episode. He made it appear in his hands, and it was corn syrup. And I'll 100% honesty here. I'm just pointing that out. I have no idea why it happened back in that episode, but
and it seems to
yeah,
relate back to Meals on Wheels as well. I'm sure we see
yeah.
some.
Well, that was
Something
Donna
there,
was
yeah.
doing the Meals on Wheels that Laura did do,
Yeah.
and it all relates back to the trailer park as well, and yeah, and also when it's got the little man eating it, it just looks horrible somehow, and then he turns into a monkey, and it just
Yeah, the monkey thing. Oh yeah, because we've seen the monkey a couple of times, I think, in Visions. Or we certainly do with the deleted scenes. I don't know if it's all in the film, but
yeah.
yeah. I'm not even going to get into the monkey, which is
No, I think
frankly
the
all the time.
monkey is just, these beings are not humans. If they want to appear as a monkey, fine.
So I've got one more note on the film, and then a few of the missing pieces ones we haven't mentioned to quickly rattle through. So finally, we see.
Cool.
We get they pull back the plastic sheet off Laura straight from the first episode of Twin Peaks. Lovely kind of moment. We finally see Laura in the lodge with the good Coop from when he entered there later in his dreams. So one of those moments where we appear together. The angel appears, allowing right. So my take is the angel's there. It allows Laura's spirit to leave because we know she's still in the lodge. Spoilers from the return, and she says a couple of times, I think once in the series and once in maybe the missing pieces, but she does refer to like, I'm not Laura. She says that line as this being. So I think there's something of the Laura that belongs in the lodge and something of her spirit, which is finally allowed to leave. And I think it's Coop being there and putting her hand on the shoulder, and he's working with the angel. Like he allows the angel to be there somehow, and that
I
allows
think so.
her innocence to escape by recanting. I feel like she's just watched everything we've seen. That's my take, and that's allowed her to release this because she
Yeah,
gets to
like
some context after it all being revealed to her.
what's the name of those like mythical Caribbeans with the P's, like poly somethings, where they're like basically there to escort someone to the afterlife, and it's almost like that's what Cooper is functioning as here, that his presence there allows her to go wherever. I mean, metaphorically, does she go to the White Lodge at this point then? Is that where Laura's soul goes, or however you want to view it?
Either way, you feel like she is free at the end of it, and I feel like if it's that, what I picked up from what's happening throughout this is like the closer she gets, the more she realizes what's happening to her and her context within that. But it's only through this moment of seeing it back, even beyond her death. I think this is the moment she gets everything, and at that moment, her soul's released, because it's basically, here is your account of everything you've done. It's sort of like getting in the pearly gates and then showing you life. And it's like, here's everything that happened, and here's why you get to go to the White Lodge, heaven, whatever you like to call it, because you resisted the evil. You managed to get through all of this on the right side of things, and you let this other person escape because that's what you wanted. And here's your final reward. And yeah, she never gets corrupted by evil. And I guess like that's her version of her Gomundagozia. Any final thoughts on that before we get into the missing pieces? Jim, can you hear me?
Oh, sorry, I'm having a bit I don't know if it's your connection or my connection, but I got most of that. Sorry, what did you just say?
Yeah. Basically, anything more on that before we go through the last few scenes from the missing pieces I've got listed?
No, I think you summed that up very nicely.
So, missing pieces, as I say, we've got an hour and a half worth of missing material from Firewalk with Me. First one, Fix the Night with lots of sparks whilst getting exposition. Oh, we kind of had that in the film as well. Oh yeah, J. Edgar versus Sheriff Cable in a punch-up. It's kind of a fun idea, but it kind of goes on for ages, and it could have just been they set up to fight, and he just punched it. Like he bends it. It should have been him. It should have just been him bending Cable, and then he sparks them out, and then we move on. Is what that scene needs to be.
Yeah, that's one of them scenes where you just think, I can't believe someone gave someone money to film this. And because there's no way they could have thought that's actually going in film. Like, it's just a waste of money. Like, that probably took a day at least to film.
And it's a full
And
boxing
like
match.
you say, it could have been, yeah, it could have been 30 seconds long and just had a literal punchline. And being funny, but no, it's just rubbish.
There's a scene with Keitha, Agent Stanley, and Coop. Again, would have been nice if they'd, but it doesn't say or do anything. I wish we'd kind of had that because it would have been nice connective tissues between the first half hour of the movie and the rest of it.
It's not necessary, but
I mean, I would like to have seen them on screen together, but just not with that scene. It's no reason. Bo checks into the hotel again. Nothing happens though. It's just yeah. There was a bit. We kind of mentioned the bit where you've got the scene around the table, but an extra bit on this is Laura and her mum. There was a nice scene with them, which I would have liked to see that stay in for texture, because it's just basically a downbeat between them interacting with each other, which you don't really see with a lot of the film. She tells her off for smoking, even though she's smoking, which for me was very apropos of the 80s and 90s, where your parents were constantly telling you not to smoke, even though they did. Mum, Dad said it to me, even though I hadn't at that stage smoked a cigarette in my life. But it's like while they were lighting up, it very well observed. I kind of wish that was in there.
Yeah.
And then just Ray Wise completely choose the scenery as the playful dad there, which is just really nice. A scene where Dr. Jacoby is just solidified as being creepy. We kind of already knew, but he's especially creepy. He's like, hey, are you going to write another letter for me? Are you going to do this? I already wrote you 3 letters, for fuck's sake, piss off. It's like, again, it's as creepy as they wanted to show him in the TV show, but literally probably couldn't.
Yeah. And some of these do feel almost like ticking boxes. Like, we've got to include this character from the show, we've got to include that character from the show. And I totally get why they were cut out of the finished film, but it's nice that they finally did put these missing pieces together, because it was something that people had talked about for years. Well, there's an hour and a half cut. I think this is a recurring thing with Twin Peaks, that everyone's always looking for that Rosetta Stone that makes it all make sense. And for years it was, if we got the deleted scenes out of Fire Walk with Me, it'll all make it. No, it doesn't. It won't.
It will help nothing.
But it's nice that they're there.
And finally, I'm glad the missing piece exists. Again, if you're a fan, it's extra texture you get from it. Some of it's completely useless. Some of it you can see why they're cut, but it's interesting. We've already mentioned with Annie in the hospital, but just before that, you get a repeat of Coop and the little person, but with Annie this time as opposed to Laura being the focus. I think this would and Coop actually says he wants to leave the lodge, which we never really see outside of that. But there's no place for Coop to go. And the little person, I think, says something about like there's no place to go home or something like that. And it's like, because there's no place for Coop because Coop's already there in the guise of evil Coop.
Yeah.
And I thought this might have been, I think this whole bit could have been a post credit. I think this would have been a nice little cap on it. I think
maybe.
This is relevant.
I mean, it's nice in that it does give us a little bit more carrying on the show. But again, I can see why they cut it, because if you want the film to stand alone as what it is, which is the story of the last days of Laura Palmer, then even though the majority of people wanted to see what happened next, this isn't really the place to tell the story of what happened next. So
that's why I feel, though, if you do a post credit, it's not, because if it had been right at the end of the film, it would have taken away the end of the film. If you
Mm.
go post credit, it's like, well, you can choose to ignore this, but for any of you who've watched the TV show, there's nowhere else this is going to go, especially as we know
Yeah,
they didn't end up getting the other
yeah,
films. Yeah.
yeah.
And I think
Nowadays, it probably would be a post-credits scene, but yeah,
totally. And I think that just about does us. Like I think it really does show that where this is Lynch unencumbered, I think unstopped by anything else. This is the true vision of what he wanted pretty much in the TV show. It shows that we've done an hour and 45 minutes with this, whereas we managed basically an hour, maybe a bit over an hour with like half a series worth, because the first series was a small series
yeah,
and then we split the other one. But it just shows you what like it's all going to be interesting when you let Lynch do Lynch. It's certainly
yeah.
never going to be boring.
But see, I think he's just warming up. I think we're about to find out what pure David Lynch is like.
Well,
But
this is
yes,
pure David Lynch of this era.
I feel like this is a stepping stone between what the TV show was and what he would do if he was totally unrestrained. And I think with the return, we're gonna get that.
Yeah, yeah. But like, if this is him being restrained, I'd love to have seen the cut where he wasn't. That's all I'm
Yeah,
going to
very
say.
true.
But I think he's just got even more nutty in the meantime. Uh, anyway, that's about us done with Twin Peaks, the original run and the movie. So really, this is the end to that original story, all told. Now we go on to return next week. Jim, have you got anything you want to plug? Retrack maybe?
Yes, we've got the Retrek podcast ongoing, myself and Dr. Squee, as well as Admiral Elliot. And we are currently in the midst of Lower Decks Season 5.
And tomorrow's episode, we're also going to do a little tribute. I don't think it's a spoiler that we're going to do a bit of a tribute to Tony Todd.
Yeah, we're going to have a chat about
few
Tony
characters
Todd. Yeah.
in Star Trek. So please join us for that. That's tomorrow at 6 o'clock.
Wednesday.
Oh, it's
Wednesday
Monday
at 6
still.
o'clock.
Oh, God, was that only Monday today? Shit.
Yeah, that was only Monday.
Gonna need this drink.
Don't worry, it'll be fine. We'll get there.
So from now, from the Black Lodge, the White Lodge, the waiting room, and wherever the fuck me and Jim are, I've been Special Agent Squee. Joining me has been
Deputy Jim.
And until next time, I don't know what, like, yeah, what sign off would you give to these two?
Oh, Gammon Bozier. No.
Till next week.
Or whatever it was.
Gammon Bozier, and be kind.